The text on my phone screen blurred as I read it for the third time. "You're not family anymore. Your daughter deserves better than a broke mother." My son-in-law Marcus had actually written those words, actually blocked my number. My dark fingers trembled as I set the phone down on my kitchen counter, the same scratched laminate counter where I'd taught my daughter Emily how to make her grandmother's sweet potato pie when she was 8 years old, flour dusting her small hands, her gap-toothed smile lighting up the whole room. 23 years I'd spent at this counter. 23 years of breakfast before school, homework sessions after dinner, late-night talks over tea when her heart got broken for the first time. This counter had seen everything, every milestone, every struggle, every victory. And now this text message that tried to erase all of it, tried to reduce me to nothing more than an embarrassment, a burden, someone to be discarded now that they'd gotten what they needed from me. Or rather, now that they'd failed to get what they needed. I caught my reflection in the window above the sink. Dark skin, natural hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing the same faded Georgetown Law sweatshirt I'd worn for 20 years. I looked exactly like what Marcus thought I was. Broke, irrelevant, disposable. What he didn't know could fill a warehouse. But let me back up, because you need to understand how we got here. Before you judge me for what I'm about to do, you need to know what led to this moment. Before I continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Have you ever had family treat you like you were nothing? 3 years ago, Emily brought Marcus home for the first time. I remember that Saturday afternoon so clearly. I'd deep cleaned my small 2-bedroom apartment in Silver Spring for days, the same place I'd raised her alone after her father walked out when she was 2. I'd bought fresh flowers for the table, made sure there were no water stains on the bathroom sink, arranged my worn throw pillows just so on the couch, trying to make everything look as presentable as possible. Emily had called me 3 times that morning, nervous and excited in equal measure. "Mom, please don't be weird. Please don't ask him about his parents' money. Please don't bring out the baby pictures." I'd promised I wouldn't. I'd worn my nicest jeans and a blue sweater Emily had given me for Christmas. I'd even put on makeup, which I rarely did on weekends. I wanted him to see me at my best, to understand where Emily came from, to see that we might not have had money, but we had love. We had history. We had substance. Marcus arrived in a BMW. I watched from my window as he parked, as he checked his reflection in the side mirror, as Emily grabbed his hand and led him toward my building's entrance. My chest tightened. I already knew this wouldn't go well. I could feel it in my bones. When I opened the door, Marcus took one look around my apartment, and I saw it in his eyes. That flicker of judgment. The slight widening of his pupils as he took in my old furniture, my makeshift bookshelf made of cinder blocks and wood planks, my kitchen table from Goodwill that wobbled if you leaned on it wrong, the way his gaze lingered on the water stain on my ceiling from the upstairs neighbor's leak 2 years ago that the landlord still hadn't properly fixed. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That careful, polite smile you give when you're trying very hard to hide what you're really thinking. "Ms. Patterson," he'd said, extending his hand. His handshake was firm but brief, like he didn't want to make too much contact. "Emily's told me so much about you. All good things, I hope," I'd said, trying to keep my voice light. "Please, call me Diane. Come in, sit down. Can I get you something to drink? I have iced tea, water, coffee." "Water's fine," he'd said, settling onto my second-hand couch like he was afraid it might collapse beneath him. He sat stiffly, back straight, as if touching the cushions, too much might somehow contaminate him. "So, Ms. Patterson, what do you do?" he'd asked, settling onto my second-hand couch like he was afraid it might collapse. "I'm a paralegal," I'd said, "at Morrison & Associates downtown." The way he nodded, that patronizing little smile. "That's nice. Important work, I'm sure." Emily had squeezed my hand under the table. She knew. She'd always known how hard I worked, how I'd put myself through community college at night while working 2 jobs during the day, how I'd made sure she had everything she needed, even if it meant I wore the same 3 outfits for years. Marcus came from money. Old family restaurant money, specifically. His parents owned 4 successful Italian restaurants across D.C. and Virginia. He'd grown up in McLean, gone to private schools, had a trust fund waiting for him when he turned 25. He'd taken that money and opened his own place 2 years ago, Marcello's, upscale Italian fusion in Georgetown. Emily fell in love with his confidence, his ambition. I tried to be happy for her. I really did. The engagement came fast. 6 months of dating, and suddenly there was a ring. A big one. 3 carats, princess cut, platinum band. Emily called me crying happy tears. Told me Marcus had proposed at the Kennedy Center during a performance of Swan Lake. He'd reserved a private box, had champagne waiting, the whole production. It was the kind of proposal every girl dreams about. I was happy for her. I was. But I also felt this creeping dread in the pit of my stomach. This sense that Marcus was moving fast because he wanted to lock her down before she realized something, before she saw beneath the polished surface. The wedding planning was a nightmare I tried to navigate with grace. Marcus's family took over immediately. His mother, Catherine, made appointments with wedding planners without consulting Emily, chose venues before Emily could even look at options. I watched my daughter get steamrolled by people with money and opinions and a certainty that their way was the only way. The wedding was lavish, ridiculously so. The 4 Seasons in Georgetown, 300 guests, a live band and a string quartet, flowers that cost more than I made in 6 months. I offered to help pay, told Emily I'd been saving. But Marcus's father waved me off at the rehearsal dinner, his hand dismissive, his smile condescending. "We've got this covered, Diane. Just enjoy being mother of the bride. Relax. You've done your job raising her. Let us take it from here. Let us take it from here." Like I was being benched. Like my role was over. Like Emily didn't need me anymore now that she had real family with real money. I wore the nicest dress I could afford from Nordstrom Rack. Dusty rose, knee-length, with 3/4 sleeves that hit me just right. I'd saved for 6 months for that dress. Had it tailored to fit perfectly. Bought new shoes to match. Spent 2 hours the morning of the wedding doing my makeup, styling my locks into an elegant updo with small pearl pins my own mother had worn at her wedding. I thought I looked beautiful. Emily told me I looked beautiful. But at the reception, as I stood in the receiving line next to my daughter and her new husband, I felt Marcus's mother's eyes on me, felt her judgment like a physical weight. She cornered me by the bar during the cocktail hour. She'd had 2 glasses of champagne already. I could smell it on her breath as she leaned in, her voice low and conspiratorial, like she was doing me a favor by offering unsolicited advice. "Have you thought about doing something with your hair?" she'd asked, her eyes fixed on my natural curls, on my locks that I'd spent years growing, that were part of who I was, my heritage, my identity. There are such good straightening treatments now. Very natural looking. A friend of mine goes to this salon in Chevy Chase. I could get you her stylist's number. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I'd smiled through it, kept my voice even and pleasant. "I like my hair the way it is, Catherine, but thank you for the suggestion." She'd patted my arm, her touch light and dismissive, like she was humoring a child who didn't know better. "Of course, dear. I just meant for the photos. You know how formal wedding photos can be. I just want Emily to have pictures she'll treasure forever." The implication was clear. My natural hair would ruin the photos, would be something Emily would regret, would mark these pictures as somehow less than perfect. I'd excused myself, gone to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried for exactly 3 minutes. Then I'd fixed my makeup, straightened my shoulders, and gone back out to celebrate my daughter's wedding with a smile plastered on my face. That was 2 years ago. 2 years of subtle digs and not-so-subtle exclusions. 2 years of family dinners I wasn't invited to until Emily noticed and insisted they include me. 2 years of holiday celebrations where I felt like the charity case they had to tolerate because excluding me would make them look bad. There was the time at Easter when Marcus's aunt asked me, in front of everyone, if I'd ever considered going back to school. "Get a real degree, you know. Make something of yourself. It's never too late." As if my associate's degree from community college, earned while working 2 jobs and raising a daughter alone, meant nothing. As if I hadn't made something of myself already. There was the time at Christmas when Marcus's father pulled me aside and offered to help me out with my rent. I know things must be tight on a paralegal's salary, no shame in accepting help from family. The condescension dripped from every word. The assumption that I was struggling, that I needed their money, their charity. I'd declined politely, told him I was managing just fine. He'd looked at me with something like pity, like I was too proud to accept reality. And Marcus. Marcus was the worst of all, in his subtle way. He never said anything directly cruel, never insulted me outright, but he had this way of talking around me, of discussing important family matters without including me, of making plans that involved Emily without checking if those plans conflicted with time she'd set aside to visit me. He'd suggest expensive restaurants for Emily's birthday, places he knew I couldn't afford. Then, when I'd decline to join them, he'd look at Emily and say, "Your mom's always so busy. Must be all that overtime," making it sound like I was choosing work over my daughter, when really I was choosing not to embarrass myself by admitting I couldn't afford a $200 meal. Emily tried to bridge the gap. She'd invite me to their apartment for dinner, insist on coming to my place for our traditional Tuesday movie nights, call me every Sunday morning for our weekly catch-up, but I could feel the strain, could see her trying to manage two worlds that didn't fit together. Her life with Marcus, all polish and privilege. Her life with me, simple and honest and real. I watched my daughter slowly lose herself, trying to make everyone happy. Watched her start questioning her own choices. She'd call me and ask if I thought her new haircut looked professional enough, if her work wardrobe was too casual, if she should try to be more like Marcus's family, more refined, more sophisticated. And I'd tell her the same thing every time. "Baby, you're perfect exactly as you are. Don't let anyone make you feel like you need to be something else." But even as I said it, I wondered if she could hear the words beneath the words, if she understood that I was really talking about myself, about all the times I'd had to smile through judgment, all the times I'd had to prove my worth to people who'd already decided I had none. Then, 3 weeks ago, everything changed. Emily called me crying. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from a late night at the office, was heating up leftover soup, still in my work clothes. My chest tightened the moment I saw her name on my phone. Emily didn't call this late, unless something was very wrong. "Mom." Her voice was thick with tears, broken. "Mom, I don't know what to do." I turned off the stove, sat down at my kitchen table, made my voice as calm as possible, even though my heart was racing. "What happened, baby? Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine. Physically, I'm fine. But Mom, the restaurant, it's failing. Marcus took out these loans to expand last year, and now we can't make the payments. The bank is threatening foreclosure. Suppliers are demanding cash up front because we're behind on our accounts. We might lose everything." I listened as she poured it all out. The mistakes Marcus had made. Expanding too fast. Hiring too many people. Buying equipment they didn't need because Marcus wanted the best of everything. Taking on debt based on projections that were too optimistic, too rosy, too divorced from reality. His parents can't help anymore. They've already given him so much. They said they're tapped out, that he needs to figure this out on his own. And Marcus is, Mom, he's falling apart. He barely sleeps. He snaps at me over nothing. Yesterday he threw a plate in the kitchen when I asked him about our mortgage payment. Just picked it up and threw it against the wall. My blood ran cold at that. "Did he hurt you?" "No, he'd never. He was just so angry, so scared, the plate didn't even come near me. But Mom, I've never seen him like this. He's not himself." I wanted to drive over there right then. Wanted to pull my daughter out of that situation and bring her home where she was safe. But I forced myself to stay calm, to think, to ask the right questions. "How much do you need, Emily? What would it take to get you out of this hole?" Silence. Long and heavy. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Could picture her sitting in her beautiful apartment, surrounded by expensive furniture and designer decor. Everything perfect on the surface, everything falling apart underneath. $12,000. We need $12,000 by the end of the month to catch up on the most critical payments. After that, maybe we can restructure, find a way forward. But Mom, I know that's impossible. I know you don't have that kind of money. I shouldn't have even called. I just needed to hear your voice, needed to feel like someone understood. My daughter. My careful, cautious daughter who'd majored in accounting specifically because she never wanted to struggle with money like we had. Who'd sworn she'd never be in a position where she couldn't pay her bills. Who'd married this man thinking his family money meant security. And here she was, drowning in her husband's bad decisions, feeling helpless and alone. Something inside me hardened in that moment. Not at her. Never at her. At him. At Marcus, who'd made my daughter feel like she had nowhere to turn. Who'd taken her dreams of security and gambled them away on his ego. Who'd probably told her not to ask me because what could a broke paralegal possibly do to help? Let me see what I can do, I'd told her. I'd spent that night awake, staring at the ceiling. The thing was, I could have written her that check. I could have written a check for 10 times that amount. But giving them the money would have solved nothing. Marcus needed to learn something I'd learned the hard way. Respect isn't about what you have. It's about who you are. 2 days later, Marcus called me himself. The first time he'd called me directly in over a year. Diane, hi. Listen, Emily probably told you about our situation. His voice was strained, tight. Good. We're in a real bind here. I know this is a lot to ask, but we really need help. 12,000 would save us. I'd let the silence stretch. Let him squirm. Marcus, I'm a paralegal. Where do you think I'd get $12,000? I don't know. A loan? Your retirement? Look, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but this is for Emily. Our future. Your grandchildren someday. The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost insulting. I'll think about it, I'd said. Think fast. We have until the end of the month. He'd hung up without saying thank you, without saying goodbye. That was 2 weeks ago. I'd let them stew, let them panic. I knew Marcus was scrambling, trying to borrow from friends, from his parents who'd already given him so much. I knew because Emily would call me late at night, whispering so Marcus wouldn't hear, telling me how stressed he was, how he'd started snapping at her, blaming her for things that weren't her fault. And I'd listened, bided my time, made my plans. Then came Thanksgiving week. I'd texted Emily on Monday morning. Simple question. What time should I come over Thursday? Should I bring my cranberry sauce? 3 hours later, Marcus replied, from Emily's phone. Change of plans, family only this year. You understand? I stared at those words. Family only. As if I wasn't family. As if I hadn't carried Emily for 9 months, raised her alone, sacrificed everything so she could have a better life than mine. I'd called Emily immediately. It went to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Voicemail. I sent her a text asking if she was okay. That's when I got the second message. This time from Marcus's own number. This time, he made sure I knew exactly where I stood. Stop bothering Emily. She has enough stress without you adding to it. You're not family anymore. Your daughter deserves better than a broke mother. Don't contact us again. Then he blocked my number. I sat there in my kitchen, that text burning itself into my vision, and something cold settled over me. A strange calm. The kind of clarity that only comes when you've been pushed past your breaking point and landed somewhere beyond anger. Subscribe now, because what I discovered next changed everything. You see, Marcus didn't know several crucial things about me. He'd made assumptions based on my apartment, my car, my clothes, based on the fact that I still worked as a paralegal after 18 years, based on his narrow definition of success that equated worth with visible displays of wealth. First, he didn't know that I wasn't just any paralegal. I was the senior paralegal at Morrison & Associates, one of DC's most prestigious corporate law firms. I'd been there since I was 23 years old, fresh out of community college, hungry and determined and willing to work harder than anyone else in that building. I'd started in the mailroom, worked my way up to receptionist, then legal assistant, then paralegal, then senior paralegal. I specialized in commercial real estate, which meant I saw deals most people never even knew were happening. I watched wealth being built, watched smart people make strategic investments, learned the language of property, of equity, of long-term financial planning. Second, he didn't know that 5 years ago, Walter Morrison, one of the founding partners, had called me into his office. It was a Thursday afternoon. I remember because I thought I was in trouble. You don't get called to the founding partner's office unless something's very wrong or very right, and I couldn't think of anything I'd done to warrant the latter. Diane, Walter had said, gesturing for me to sit down. I've been thinking about your future with this firm. You've been with us, what, 13 years now? 13 years, I'd confirmed, my heart pounding. Was this it? Was I finally getting promoted to a position with real authority? You're one of the best paralegals I've ever worked with. Meticulous, intelligent, trustworthy. But I know we can't promote you the way you deserve without a law degree, and I also know you're not in a position to stop working to go back to school. My heart had sunk. This was the conversation. The one where they tell you you're great, but you've hit your ceiling. Where they explain all the reasons why you'll never rise above your current station. However, Walter had continued, I want to offer you something else. Something that could be just as valuable, if not more so. The firm has been acquiring small commercial properties as long-term investments. Nothing flashy, just solid buildings in up-and-coming neighborhoods. We buy them, hold them, collect rent, wait for the area to appreciate. He'd slid a folder across his desk. I'd opened it, seeing property listings, financial projections, maps of DC neighborhoods marked with potential. Instead of annual bonuses going forward, I'd like to offer you equity stakes in these properties. Small percentages, but they'll grow. They'll compound. In 10, 15, 20 years, Diane, you could have a real nest egg. Real security, the kind that doesn't depend on a paycheck. I'd stared at him, not quite believing what I was hearing. Why? I'd asked. Why would you do this? Walter had smiled. Because you've earned it. Because loyalty should be rewarded. And because, frankly, I think you're smarter about money than half the associates who work here. You understand the value of patience, of building slowly. Those are rare qualities. So I'd agreed, signed the papers, started receiving quarterly statements showing my growing equity in properties across DC, a mixed-use building in Bloomingdale, a small office complex in Petworth, a retail strip in Columbia Heights. Nothing huge, nothing flashy, but steady, reliable, growing. Over 5 years, those investments had done very well. The neighborhoods had developed just as projected. Property values had climbed. My little percentages had turned into real money. And I'd been careful, so careful. I'd reinvested the returns, lived frugally, kept driving my old Honda, kept wearing my Nordstrom Rack clearance clothes, kept living in my apartment with the water-stained ceiling. Because I'd learned something important growing up poor. You don't let people know what you have. You don't advertise your security. The moment people know you have money, they start seeing you differently, start wanting things from you, start making assumptions about who you are and what you owe them. So I'd stayed invisible. The broke paralegal, the struggling single mom, the woman who needed help, who should be grateful for scraps, who couldn't possibly understand how real money worked. And that invisibility? It had become my greatest weapon. Third, and most importantly, Marcus didn't know that 3 days ago, a property had come across my desk at work. A small commercial building in Georgetown. Prime location. 3 retail spaces on the ground floor. 2 office spaces above. The owner was selling, needed to liquidate quickly for a divorce settlement. Walter had mentioned it to me casually. Thought you might be interested, Diane. Good price. Solid tenants. I'd glanced at the file, seen the address. My blood had run cold. 1247 Wisconsin Avenue, NW, Marcello's address. I'd opened the file with shaking hands, read through the lease agreements. Marcus's restaurant was the anchor tenant. Ground floor, prime corner location. He had a 5-year lease that was up for renewal in exactly 3 weeks. The current owner had been giving him a sweetheart deal. Below market rent, probably because Marcus's father had connections. But a new owner wouldn't be bound by any verbal agreements, just the terms of the existing lease, which clearly stated that renewal was at the landlord's discretion. I'd sat at my desk for a long time that day, thinking, calculating. The property was listed at $2.8 million. I had enough from my investments, plus what I'd been carefully saving. I could swing it, barely, but I could do it. And I'd made an offer that same day. Full price, cash sale, close in 2 weeks. The seller had accepted within hours. That was 3 days ago. 2 days before Marcus sent me that text. 2 days before he blocked my number and told me I wasn't family. The closing was yesterday. I now owned the building where my son-in-law's failing restaurant was hemorrhaging money, and the lease renewal meeting was tomorrow at 10 a.m. I spent that evening after receiving Marcus's text doing what I do best: research. I pulled every public record I could find on Marcello's. Business licenses, health inspection reports, tax liens. The picture that emerged was worse than Emily had let on. Marcus had expanded too fast, taken on debt he couldn't service. He'd missed payments to suppliers, had 2 health code violations that were still unresolved. His Yelp reviews had been trending downward for 6 months. Food quality was inconsistent. Service was slow. He was bleeding customers to newer, trendier places. The $12,000 Emily had mentioned? That wouldn't even put a dent in his real problems. He needed to restructure everything, and his pride would never let him do it. I stayed up late, adjusting my braids in the mirror, thinking about my next move. My brown skin looked tired in the harsh bathroom light. When had I gotten so many gray hairs? When had the lines around my eyes gotten so deep? I thought about Emily, my brilliant, kind daughter who'd married a man who couldn't see past his own ego, who was probably lying awake in bed right now, wondering how to save a business that was already sinking, wondering why her mother hadn't answered her last few calls, because Marcus had made sure I couldn't. I went to bed around 2 a.m., set my alarm for 6. I had preparation to do. The next morning, I took my time getting ready. I pulled out the one designer suit I owned. Bought it on sale 3 years ago, but never worn it. Navy blue, perfectly tailored. I'd been saving it for something special. This qualified. I did my makeup carefully. Nothing dramatic, just professional, polished. I twisted my locks into an elegant updo, the kind that said I belonged in any boardroom in this city. Put on the pearl earrings my mother had left me. Looked in the mirror one more time. The woman looking back at me didn't look broke. Didn't look like someone who could be dismissed or blocked or told she wasn't family. She looked like someone who owned things, someone who had power. I got to the property at 9:45 a.m. Marcus wouldn't arrive until 10. I wanted to be there first, wanted to see his face when he walked in. The property manager, Linda, had been briefed. She knew I was the new owner. She was professional, cordial, showed me to the small conference room on the second floor where lease renewals were typically discussed. Mr. Russo doesn't know there's been a change in ownership, I told her. Let's keep it that way until I'm ready. She'd nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd dealt with Marcus before. I could tell by the way her jaw tightened when she mentioned his name. If you're enjoying this, hit that like button right now. And let me tell you, you don't want to miss what happens next. At 9:58, Linda got a call. Mr. Russo is here. Should I send him up? Give me 2 minutes, I said, then send him in. I positioned myself at the head of the table, sat down, arranged my papers, the lease agreement, a property assessment, a list of required repairs and updates, a proposed new lease with very different terms. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. This was it. The moment everything changed. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Marcus's voice, confident as always, talking to Linda about the weather, about business, acting like he owned the place. The door opened. Marcus walked in, checking his phone. He didn't look up immediately, just strode in like he owned the room, wearing an expensive suit, hair perfectly styled. The picture of success, the illusion of it, anyway. Morning, he said, still looking at his phone. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. Traffic was insane on M Street. Then he looked up. I wish I had a photograph of his face in that moment. I wish I could frame it and hang it on my wall. His eyes went wide. His mouth literally fell open. The phone in his hand dipped. Forgotten. He just stared at me, sitting there in my navy suit, my dark fingers laced together on the table in front of me, looking every inch like what I was, the person who held his future in her hands. Diane? His voice cracked on my name. What are you? Why are you? I let him flounder for a moment. Let the confusion wash over his face, followed rapidly by dawning horror. Good morning, Marcus, I said, my voice steady and calm. Please sit down. We have a lot to discuss regarding your lease renewal. My lease renewal? Diane, I don't understand. What are you doing here? Where's Mr. Henderson? Mr. Henderson sold the property. I'm the new owner, as of yesterday. Now please sit down. I watched the color drain from his face. Actually watched it happen, like someone had pulled a plug and let all the blood flow out. He gripped the back of the chair in front of him, and for a second, I thought he might actually fall. You bought this building? I did. But you're You don't have. How did I, a broke paralegal, afford a $2.8 million property? I finished for him. Turns out I've been making excellent investments for the past 5 years. Who knew? His knuckles were white where he gripped the chair. I gestured to it again. Sit. Down, Marcus. He sat. He had no choice. He literally had no choice, and we both knew it. I slid a folder across the table to him, watched his shaking hands open it, watched his eyes scan the contents. The new lease proposal, market rate rent, which was roughly triple what he'd been paying. Standard commercial terms, no special treatment, no sweetheart deals. This is 3 times what I'm paying now, he whispered. That's correct. Your previous landlord was giving you a significant discount. I'm not inclined to continue that arrangement. I can't afford this. You know I can't afford this. Yes, I'm aware of your financial situation. I'm aware you asked Emily and me for $12,000. I'm aware you've missed supplier payments and have unresolved health code violations. I'm aware of quite a lot, actually. His face had gone from white to red, anger replacing shock. This is revenge. This is because of what I said about Thanksgiving. Would you do what I did? Comment below before I tell you what happened next. I leaned back in my chair, looked at him for a long moment, let the silence build until it was almost unbearable. No, Marcus, this isn't about Thanksgiving. Although blocking your mother-in-law's number 2 days after asking her for money is certainly a choice. No, this is business. This is about a property I purchased as an investment. This is about a tenant who needs to sign a new lease at market rate or find somewhere else to operate. You're destroying me. No, you did that yourself. I'm just not saving you from the consequences. He slammed his hand on the table. What do you want? You want me to apologize? Fine. I'm sorry. I was stressed. I said things I didn't mean. Is that what you want to hear? I waited until he was done. Until his breathing had slowed and the reality of his situation had settled over him like a heavy blanket. What I want, I said slowly, is for you to understand something. You don't get to decide who is and isn't family. You don't get to block my number and tell me my daughter deserves better. You don't get to treat people like they're disposable when they're useful and trash when they're not. So what happens now? You kick me out? Put my wife on the street? My daughter, I corrected him. And no, I'm not a monster. I'm a businesswoman. So here's what's going to happen. You have 3 options. I pulled out 3 separate documents, laid them in front of him like cards. Option 1, you sign this new lease at market rate. You find a way to make it work. Maybe you cut costs. Maybe you improve your service and bring in more customers. Maybe you swallow your pride and take a loan from your parents. I don't care. But you pay market rate like every other tenant in this city. I tapped the second document. Option 2, you don't renew. You have until the end of the month to vacate the premises. You find a new location. Start fresh. Maybe learn from your mistakes. I saw his jaw clench, saw the muscles in his neck tighten, but he was listening now, really listening. I picked up the third document. This was the one I'd spent most of the night working on. Option 3, you sign this partnership agreement. You make me a silent partner in Marcello's. 30% equity. In exchange, I reduce your rent to below market rate. Not as low as before, but manageable. I also provide the $12,000 in operating capital Emily mentioned. And I bring in a restaurant consultant I know. Someone who can help you fix your operational problems. His head snapped up. What's the catch? The catch is you admit you need help. You let someone with actual business sense guide you. You stop making decisions based on ego and start making them based on data. And most importantly, I leaned forward, made sure he was looking me in the eyes. You unblock my number. You apologize to Emily for the stress you've put her under. And you never, ever treat me or anyone else in your family like we're beneath you again. I watched him process this. Watched the calculations happening behind his eyes. Pride warring with desperation. Ego fighting survival. And if I take option 3, you think you can save the restaurant? I think we can save it together. If you're willing to listen, if you're willing to change. The silence stretched between us. I could hear the traffic outside, the distant sound of sirens, the hum of the heating system in the building. My building. Marcus's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it. I saw Emily's name on the screen, saw his expression crack, just for a moment. He loved her. In his own flawed, prideful way, he did love my daughter. I need time to think, he finally said. You have 24 hours. After that, I'll assume you're going with option 2, and I'll start looking for a new tenant for the space. There's a coffee shop chain that's very interested. It was a bluff, sort of. I'd made some calls, but nothing concrete. Still, I watched him flinch. He stood up slowly, gathering the documents. His movements were mechanical, robotic, like he was in shock. For what it's worth, he said at the door, not looking at me. I am sorry. About the text, about blocking your number. I've been scared. Terrified, actually. And I took it out on you because you were an easy target. That was wrong. Yes, I said simply. It was. He left. I sat there for a long time after he was gone, my hands shaking now that it was over. Ice water through my veins, but also something else. Something that felt like power, but also responsibility. I'd just put my entire financial security on the line. If Marcus chose option 2, and I couldn't find a new tenant quickly, I'd be in serious trouble. If he chose option 3 and the restaurant still failed, I'd lose both my investment and my relationship with my daughter. But if I'd done nothing, I'd have lost something more important. My self-respect. My daughter's respect. The understanding that I was someone who couldn't be dismissed or ignored. My phone rang. Emily. My hands were still trembling as I answered. Mom? Oh my God, Mom, what did you do? Her voice was panicked, but also something else. Awed, maybe. Marcus just called me. He said you bought his building? He said you own it? Mom, how is that even possible? You thought I was broke, I finished gently. I know, baby. That's what everyone thought. That's what I let everyone think. But why? Why would you hide that? I thought about that question for a moment. Why had I kept it secret? Part of it was habit. Growing up poor, you learn not to show people what you have. You learn to be invisible, to not draw attention. Part of it was protection. If people knew you had money, they treated you differently. They wanted things from you. But maybe part of it was something else. Maybe I'd wanted to see who people really were, what they really thought of me. And now I knew. Because money changes how people see you, I told Emily. I wanted to know who loved me for me, not for what I could give them. And Marcus failed that test. Marcus failed that test spectacularly. She was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? That's up to him. I gave him 3 options. One of them could actually save the restaurant and your marriage if he's willing to accept help. And if he doesn't take it, then he loses the restaurant, and you'll have to decide what that means for you. Another silence. Then, in a small voice, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry about what he said to you. About blocking your number. If I'd known, I know, baby. This isn't your fault. Can I come see you? Tonight? Of course. Always. If you're a woman who's ever had to stand up for yourself when everyone underestimated you, hit that like button right now. Emily came over that evening. She'd been crying. I could tell from her swollen eyes, her blotchy cheeks. We sat on my old second-hand couch, the same one Marcus had judged so harshly, and she laid her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was small. Tell me about the investments, she said. Tell me everything I don't know about my own mother. So I did. I told her about Walter Morrison's offer 5 years ago, about the small properties I'd bought stakes in, about watching them appreciate, about reinvesting the returns, about living frugally so I could build something solid, something that couldn't be taken away. You could have told me, she said. You could have shown me, proved to Marcus and his family that you were successful too. Maybe, I agreed. But then I wouldn't have known who they really were, and more importantly, you wouldn't have known either. She sat up, looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. He's been so stressed, so awful to live with, snapping at me over nothing, blaming me for things that aren't my fault. And I kept making excuses for him because I thought it was just the business failing. But maybe this is who he is when things get hard, I finished. And you need to decide if that's someone you can build a life with. She cried some more after that. I held her, made her tea, ordered Thai food from her favorite place. We didn't talk about Marcus or the restaurant or the impossible choice in front of him. We just sat together, my daughter and I, like we'd done so many times before. Around 10 p.m., her phone rang. Marcus. She looked at me, uncertain. I nodded. She answered on speaker. Emily, is your mom there? I'm here, Marcus, I said. Silence. Then, I'm taking option 3, the partnership, but I have conditions. I'm listening. I want final say on menu changes and hiring. You're a silent partner, which means silent. You don't interfere with daily operations unless I ask for input. And if this doesn't work, if the restaurant still fails, even with your help, you sell me out at a fair price. You don't just keep my equity. They were reasonable conditions, smart even. He was protecting himself, setting boundaries. Good. That meant he was thinking like a businessman, not just reacting from his ego. Agreed, I said. But I have one more condition. What? Family dinners. Once a month, minimum. At my apartment, you, Emily, and me. No avoiding me. No excluding me. If we're going to be business partners, we're going to learn to be family too. Emily's hand found mine. Squeezed tight. Fine, Marcus said. His voice was rough, tired. Once a month. At your place. Good. Come by tomorrow at 2 p.m. Bring your business records for the past 2 years. We're doing a full audit before we move forward. Tomorrow? That's Thanksgiving. Yes, it is. And since you said family only, and I'm now your business partner and always was your family, I'll expect you both here at noon. I'm making turkey and all the sides. We can work after we eat. I heard him exhale. A long, defeated sound, but also, maybe relief. Okay, we'll be there. And Diane, I really am sorry. About everything. I know, I said. See you tomorrow. Emily hung up, looked at me with something like wonder in her eyes. Did you just make my husband cook his business records on Thanksgiving? I did. She started laughing. Actually laughing for the first time in weeks, probably. Mom, you're terrifying. I'm effective, I corrected. There's a difference. That night, after Emily left, I sat in my kitchen in the dark, thinking about what I'd done, what I'd set in motion. I'd risked everything. My savings, my security, my relationship with my daughter. But I'd also gained something. I'd shown Marcus exactly who I was, what I was capable of, and I'd shown myself that being underestimated could be the greatest advantage of all. The next 6 months were intense. Marcus and I met every Monday morning at 8 a.m. We went through his books line by line, found waste everywhere, overpriced suppliers, inefficient staff scheduling, menu items that cost more to make than they brought in revenue. The consultant I brought in was brutal. Maria Rodriguez had turned around 3 failing restaurants in D.C. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Your food is trying to be too many things, she told Marcus at their first meeting. Pick a lane. Are you authentic Italian, fusion, modern? Because right now you're none of them, and customers can tell. I watched Marcus's face turn red, watched him open his mouth to argue. But then he looked at me, at the partnership agreement sitting on the table between us, and he closed his mouth, nodded. Listened. We cut the menu by 40%, focused on what Marcus actually did well. His pasta was excellent, his sauces were inventive. We built around that. Brought in a new sous chef who'd worked at Fiola, retrained the front-of-house staff. It was hard work, exhausting. I'd spend my days at Morrison & Associates, then my evenings at Marcello's, going over numbers, making decisions, solving problems. Emily helped too. She took over the books, implemented proper accounting systems. Turned out my daughter inherited my head for business. And slowly, painfully, things started to turn around. 3 months in, we had our first profitable week. Marcus actually hugged me when I showed him the numbers. It was awkward, but genuine. 6 months in, we were consistently in the black. Yelp reviews improved. The Washington Post food critic gave us 3 stars. Word of mouth brought in new customers. And every month, without fail, Marcus and Emily came to my apartment for dinner. We ate my cooking. We talked about business, about life. Slowly, grudgingly, we became something like a real family. Marcus's parents came to one of those dinners, about 8 months after the lease renewal meeting. His mother took one look at my apartment, at my second-hand couch, at my bookshelves made of cinder blocks, and I saw it click for her. She thought I was poor because I lived simply. She'd never considered that there might be a difference. "This is lovely," she'd said, meaning it for the first time. So cozy. We never talked about the text. about what Marcus had said or done. Some things don't need to be rehashed. The fact that he showed up every month, that he listened to my advice, that he treated Emily better, spoke louder than any apology. A year after I bought the building, Marcello's was thriving. We'd paid off most of Marcus's debts. We're even looking at opening a second location. My 30% stake was worth significantly more than my initial investment. But more than that, I'd gained my daughter back, gained her respect, gained her understanding of what I'd built for us, what I'd always been building, even when she couldn't see it. Last month, Emily called me with news. She was pregnant, my first grandchild, due in 6 months. "I want to name her Diane," she told me, crying happy tears. "After you, after the strongest person I know." I cried too. Sitting in my kitchen, looking at my reflection in the window, dark skin, gray hairs I'd stopped bothering to cover, lines around my eyes from years of smiling through hard times. I looked exactly like myself. Finally, completely myself. Marcus called later that same day, asked if we could meet. Not for business, just to talk. We met at a coffee shop near my office. He looked different than he had a year ago. Less arrogant, more solid, like he'd finally grown into himself. "I've been thinking about that day," he said. "The lease renewal meeting. The way you looked at me. I think about it all the time." "What about it?" "You could have destroyed me. You had every right to. I'd treated you like garbage, said unforgivable things, and instead, you gave me a chance to fix everything. Why?" I thought about that question. The real answer, not the easy one. "Because destroying you would have destroyed Emily too," I said. "And because I wanted you to learn that poor and powerless aren't the same thing. That respect isn't about what you have. It's about how you treat people." "I get it now," he said. "I really do. And I'm going to make sure my daughter grows up understanding that too. My granddaughter, little Diane." "Good," I said. "That's all I ever wanted." As I'm sitting here now, a year and a half after that text message, after being told I wasn't family, after being blocked and dismissed and judged, I can tell you that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about transformation, about taking a moment of cruelty and turning it into an opportunity for growth. For everyone. Marcello's is packed every weekend now. I still own the building. My investment portfolio has grown. I'm still a paralegal at Morrison & Associates, still driving the same old car, still living in my small apartment with my secondhand couch. Because having money doesn't mean you have to show it. Having power doesn't mean you have to flaunt it. Sometimes the strongest position is the one nobody sees until it's too late. Emily's due date is in 3 weeks. Marcus has been taking parenting classes, learning to change diapers, reading books about infant development. He's terrified and excited in equal measure. And me? I'm knitting a blanket for my granddaughter. Pink and purple, her mother's favorite colors. I'll give it to her at the hospital, along with a letter I've been writing, about strength and resilience, about the difference between being broke and being poor, about how the most powerful thing you can be is underestimated, because little Diane needs to know what her grandmother knows. That family isn't about money or status or living up to someone else's expectations. It's about showing up, about being there when things are hard, about loving people even when they don't deserve it, and especially when they need it most. Last week, Marcus unblocked my number. It's a small thing, symbolic really, since we talk every day now. But he sent me a screenshot showing my contact restored with a heart emoji next to my name. "Sorry it took so long," the message said. "Should never have blocked you in the first place. You're family. You've always been family." I saved that screenshot. Not because I'm petty, though I definitely have my moments, but because it represents something important. The moment when someone finally sees you. Really sees you. Not the version they created in their head. Sometimes I think about that text message. "You're not family anymore. Your daughter deserves better than a broke mother." And I smile. Because he was right about one thing. Emily did deserve better. She deserved a mother who stood up for herself, who didn't let anyone make her feel small, who understood that her worth wasn't determined by her bank balance or the size of her apartment or whether her hair was straight enough for family photos. She deserved a mother who was exactly who I am, someone who built something real out of nothing, Someone who knew when to be kind and when to be ruthless. Someone who understood that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's evolution. That's what I gave her. That's what I gave Marcus too, whether he realizes it or not. The chance to become better than he was. Tomorrow is our monthly family dinner. Emily requested my grandmother's sweet potato pie. Marcus is bringing wine from the restaurant's new collection. His mother asked if she could come too. She's been different lately. Warmer, more genuine. I think watching her son struggle and survive taught her something too. I'll make the pie tonight. The same recipe I taught Emily when she was 8 years old. The same recipe I'll teach little Diane when she's old enough. Because some things are worth passing down. Some lessons need to be learned through butter and sugar and the patience of waiting for perfection. And isn't that what family really is? Not the people who never hurt you. Not the people who always see your worth. But the people who learn, who grow, who show up to make amends and try to do better. Marcus still has his moments. Times when his ego flares up. When he forgets the lessons we've learned. But now, I just look at him across the table at our Monday meetings, and he remembers sitting in that conference room, his face white with shock, realizing that the woman he'd dismissed owned everything he'd built. That memory keeps him humble, keeps us all humble, really. People ask me sometimes, especially other women who've been in similar situations, if I ever regret not just kicking him out, if I ever wish I'd chosen pure revenge over complicated grace. The answer is no, because what would that have accomplished? I'd have had my moment of satisfaction, sure, watching him lose everything. But I'd have lost too. Lost my daughter's happiness. Lost the chance to prove that strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about what you build in the aftermath. And I built something beautiful. A family that actually functions. A business that thrives. A daughter who understands her mother in ways she never did before. A son-in-law who learned that respect is earned, not assumed. A future where my granddaughter will grow up knowing she comes from strength on both sides. That's worth more than any revenge could ever be. My favorite moment in all of this? It wasn't the shock on Marcus's face at the lease meeting, though that was satisfying. It wasn't the restaurant's turnaround, though that was rewarding. It was 3 months ago at our family dinner. Emily was showing off her ultrasound pictures. Marcus was excited, nervous, planning. And his mother, who'd once told me to straighten my hair for photos, reached over and touched my locks. Gently, reverently. "These are beautiful," she said. "I hope the baby has your hair, your strength." That moment, right there, that was my victory. Not because she finally approved of me, but because she finally saw me. Really saw me. Not as the broke mother-in-law to be tolerated, but as the woman who saved her son's dream and taught him what it means to be family. So yes, my son-in-law texted me that I wasn't family, that my daughter deserved better. And then he discovered that I'd bought his building, that the lease renewal meeting would be with me, that every assumption he'd made about who I was and what I could do was completely wrong. And the best part? He was right. Emily did deserve better. And now, because of what happened, because of the hard choices and the difficult conversations and the work we all put in, she has it. We all do. My favorite moment was when Marcus's face went white as he realized who owned his building. What was yours? Comment below. And if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever had to choose between staying quiet and standing up, if you're a woman who kept building even when no one was watching, the next story waiting for you is going to hit different. Click the video on screen now. Trust me, you won't regret it.